To bring my Harmony scenes into a single timeline, I'm going to use Premiere to stitch them together. And the first thing that I want to do is to create a project folder. This project folder, I will put my assets into it. I can even put a folder and name it in it. I mean, it's not as important of how I structure that folder right now. What's important is that I have a folder, because the Premiere project file will need these video files as reference. So the Premiere file is just a timeline, but it has actual no video content in it. And then we add that video content to it, but it will always need a reference to those files. So now when I go into Premiere, I can create a new project. And when I go to create the new project, the key thing, I want to make sure I'm working in HD to begin with. And then I will want to choose this folder that I have on the desktop. And that is where I'm going to save it. And I've given it a name, I've chosen where it's going to go. The rest of it we can pretty much leave. And then Premiere is going to come up. Now, when I'm in Premiere, we have different workspaces that we can work with here. Commonly, so if your workspace looks different than mine, you may have chosen a different preset. So if I'm doing coloring or learning or assembly or editing, all these, I spend most of my time working in the editing workspace. That's where I'm most comfortable. To me, that's my standard. And under workspaces, you can always then choose reset to the safe layout, and it will reset it to the default setting. To work on our project, now what we need to do is we need to import our assets, and then we also need to create a sequence. A sequence, if we notice here under timeline, it says no sequences. The sequence is the timeline. It's a sequence because I'm going to sequence my different clips together to create my finished video. So I can bring in my assets and then create my sequence, or create my sequence and then bring in assets. To bring in content, under import, Command-I, so file import. Inside the project window, this is where I'll see the assets I'm working with. If I even just double click, it brings it in. I can also right click and choose import. Again, same thing. It defaults to whatever your previous project was. Now I'm going to choose, well, I don't need to bring in those folders. I don't need to bring in the project itself. I just want to bring in my assets. Hit import. Now I've brought those assets in, so now we can see that I have these 6 items. The next thing is under File. I can choose New and Sequence. It's also Command-N, and I can right-click, go over here, and New Sequence from Clip, because I clicked on a sequence. If I had a bigger window, so I had empty space to click, and I could right-click and choose it off the list there as well. And I can look here, and it says New Item, and I can click, and I can see there's sequence. So like every other Adobe program, there's multiple ways to get to the same destination. So I'm going to choose New Sequence, and we have different options available to us. Now, one thing we may want to do as part of this, because all of these projects came out of Harmony, that means they're all going to be in the same format. Because one thing that happens is if I create a sequence in one setting, whether it be HD or 24 frames a second, 30, 50, 60, whatever settings I choose, if I bring my asset into it, if it doesn't match, it is then going to need to make a new copy of the video at that new setting. It needs to transcode it so that it can work in that setting. So I can choose this, or I can go through and choose a different sequence. Here we'll just start with this one right here. New sequence from clip. When I do that, it's now created a new sequence for me. And let's go find that sequence on the list here. and we'll see the icon changed a little bit. So we have these, we can see they're all the .movs. Here, it's now, oh, everything was selected. I didn't realize everything was selected when I brought it in. So it added all the clips to the timeline. Well, I guess that's one way to do it. I was intending just to make it based on one, but it is what it is, so that's fine. I can view it as a list, and if I view it as a list, I can see it tells me what the frame rate is on it, and I can find the ins and outs, and I can also get the video information, so then I can find out what is the form of the audio, what is the pixel resolution, is it square, non-square pixels, etc. So we can get all that data for it. So I am going to recommend when you bring your assets in, at least make the sequence by right-clicking on a clip. If you have all of them selected, well, we can see it added them to the timeline. Now here I have this current time indicator as I move it through the timeline, so I can see my different clips. So we have the John Wick clip, then I have Force Ghost Yoda, then we have these two characters, non-Force Ghost Yoda, face, and then we finish with the final character here. So I've added the clips to my timeline. Now if I don't want any of those clips in there, I can just hit delete, they go away. And if I decide that maybe I want to open up with that project first, and then add in quick project, and then I maybe want to add in the face as part of it, add in the basic Grogu, and then we have the other version. Oh, I want those in a different order. So really, it's just about organizing my clips as I put them into my timeline. And I can hit space to see them move. Now, one thing I noticed is somehow after I deleted, I think I accidentally clicked and turned off audio, so now none of the audio went with any of my clips. So I'm just going to pull those back out. Let's drag it back out again, and this time I can see it adds the audio in to my clip. So with the clip, I can scrub the timeline, grabbing the CTI, and move it. We can see audio is happening over there. If I hit space,
in the first place, that makes no sense.
It plays the audio.
With the fork.
I hate you.
So these clips are happening. Now, if I need to edit any of these clips that I've made, so if I want to, actually I think I'm just going to put out, the child has no audio, but the blue face does. Put out the other child, and with this character here. So we can see as I move through the timeline what has happened. Now, as I transition between these, if I need to do any editing, I can zoom in a little bit to make it easier to see what is happening. If I want to trim this, we can do it using the tools in our toolbar. The razor tool allows me, I can go in on a clip and just click right there. I can grab the select tool, click on the part that I selected, and hit delete, and it goes away. Now you'll notice there's a gap there. One of the ways I can close that gap is I can click in between, click, and it goes away. So that's one way I can do that. And there are keyboard shortcuts for doing trimming to not only slice it, but also then to eliminate that space. So Q and W will allow you to delete from the beginning or end of a clip. So if you look on your keyboard, you'll see Q is on the left, W is on the right. So if I were to want to trim this clip right here, make it shorter, well, we'll do a more dramatic. I'll just go right in the middle so we can see. If I hit Q, it's going to delete everything on that clip to the left of where I am and eliminate that space, and now we can see how it got shorter. Now, if I wanted to just take the end of this clip here because I feel like they're staring too long and I want to get into the force goes faster. W gets rid of it. You can see how everything shifted over very quickly and easily. So we can use Q and W to do top and tail trimming. Just remembering Q takes the left side, W takes the right side of wherever the CTI is, the remaining part of that clip. It can be a very fast way to scrub through if you need to take bits and pieces off. It's more common you use that when you have video footage because you usually roll the camera for a few seconds before the action starts, so that you would need to do some modifications to what you have. So down here at the bottom, I can, I didn't really explain, but it allows me to zoom in or out. So if I wanted to zoom out on everything here, so I can see what's going on, I can go and select it, and I can just move all of it over. So if I wanted to put something at the beginning, say like some text, let's go back here, and now I can just simply click with the text tool and start typing some text. So now I have created my title. Now I can click here and move this around a little bit, position it how I want it to be on screen, and we can see how it now shows up in the timeline. Now, one thing we'll notice is when we are working with text, this is going to be under my effect controls. I can now modify this, and I can change it to be a different typeface. I can change it to be left, center, or right justified. I can make it bigger or smaller by changing the font size. You can see how I can make this title bigger. And I'll probably need to move it over a little bit. Now the nice part is I can just click and drag it, which is a little different than if I wanted to move this video over. If I select it with the select tool, I can't move it. And we move it by going under our motion, under effects, and then we can change our position. So then I could, it's not selected, so it's not going to do anything. Now, go under motion here, and now we can see how we can change that position where we are. But I can click all day with the select tool and nothing happens. So we change it using position here. We can do scale changes if we wanted. Hopefully we've done all of that in our animation tool before we got to our project. So now let's say here I have this text, and it's just simple text on black, and I want to fade that in, fade that out, or adjust it. If I want to make it longer or shorter, look at that. Click, drag, it now got longer. It gets shorter, so I can adjust the timing of that. If I zoom in on this, I can see in the time code right there, if I wanted to say make it exactly 5 seconds. Now spacebar is play, so if you remember After Effects, same as in After Effects, spacebar is play. 5 seconds, wow, that's a really long time to stare at that title. But maybe I want my title to fade in, fade out, and then have my movie show up. So we can do that. And again, we have lots of options here. We could go through, and if you look under Effects, beyond Emotion, what do we have? We have opacity, so I could fade this in or fade that out. And I could keyframe it, a little stopwatch, just like in After Effects. So I can go right here, could click on the stopwatch, and that allows me to start keyframing this property. The same way I can keyframe the position of something. So these stopwatches work the same as they do when we are doing simple animation inside of After Effects, and that works out really well. But we do have a few other tools up our sleeve that we can play with. If I click on Effects, now I am in editing, so Effects appears here. And if we go under, let's see, not learning, assembly, editing, maybe effects. Oh, if I go to the actual effects window, then I see I have effects appearing over here. So I'm going back to editing though, because that's my happy place. And if I can't see it, like, hey, where did all my project things go over here? Well, if I click on these arrows, this shows me the different tabs that are open inside this window here. So the project window, that shows me my files that I'm working with. If I go to effects, now what I want to do is video, transitions, dissolve, and if I notice we have this one dip to black. If I were to take this and drag this over to the beginning, now when I animate this, see how it fades in. If I drag dip to black to the end, it's going to fade out. Now I can still shorten up the whole clip here so it's fades out. If I want to close this gap here, I've selected it. Remember, we can press one key to make that gap go away. That is delete. And it goes away, and then
Why would a slug?
Our clip shows up. Now if I want my movie to fade in from black, let's get rid of this dip to black right here. I'm going to just select it, hit delete, goes away. I can even drag here. Oh, no, I lied. I can't, between clips, if I wanted to drag it, but apparently I can't go between a title and so I can't. So we can see how, so it's saying there's insufficient frames, but it still kind of works. So I do like, we got some nice glow going on in the background, so that's using color overlay effects or color scale effects inside of Harmony to a picture, which then causes it to get that kind of stroke and color effect. So we can see how that is working. So if I drag my dip to black to the beginning, drag my dip to black to, all right, let's try again. All right, so it seems
Why would a slug?
It's doing it. It just doesn't allow for the same full visual crossover. Now, if I wanted to dip to white between clips, so we can see how we can flash to white, flash to black. So we have all of these different visual effects that we can apply. Yeah, I know.
It seems that all that.
So as you assemble your scenes, you can have just simple cuts if you just stack the scenes one onto another. So like right here, just a simple stack on the scene. I'm noticing right here, I want to trim that up because that's too long of just sitting there. So I'm going to trim that a little bit. And remember, Q and W, top and tail trim. W is the tail, goes away. It makes it a little shorter. And we kind of get that happening.
The war is a total disaster. It's a catastrophe, nothing less.
All right. So we zoomed in. Probably should have held on that frame a little bit longer, and it goes to black, but I like how it just cuts to black. And now at the end here, if I wanted to add in credits, I could add in more text. I could certainly animate that text if I want. There are some graphics effects that have pre-built text effects on them. These I would very strongly encourage you to use with caution if you look at these, because they do we can do full on angled credits, aka Star Wars credits. So you could put that in on something if you wanted. Okay, no, I guess it's the reverse of that. But change that text, and then that gives you the text. So you can go change the words to be whatever you want. You can see here's the words over here, so you can edit it. So I could certainly leave those in. If I leave this gap in my timeline, it just means it's going to be black. Text comes in, text goes out. So the editing here is not that different from some of the other things that we have done previously. It's similar to a little bit of the frame-based work in Harmony, a little bit of the keyframes and clips of layers that we're used to using inside of After Effects. Now you will notice that we do have additional video layers here, so I could add additional content in. So I can start stacking things. I can do side-by-side video, or I can have one video on top of another. So as I'm using that as a way to edit without just cutting and hacking things into pieces. Notice there's multiple audio channels here. So if I had some music and I wanted to bring that in, I could bring it in. I can keyframe it, do all those things that we would do in, say, Adobe Audition. So we can do a lot of that directly here in Premiere. So the skills that you've learned in previous coursework using different Adobe programs will only help you as we work through this because you're used to working with this workflow. So once you have your clips assembled on your timeline, you have everything arranged how you want it to be, the final thing is going to be File, Export, Media. And just one other word, the same way we can have multiple compositions in After Effects, we can have multiple sequences here. So if you've added multiple sequences, and then you can add a sequence into a sequence, so you can build your project as small timelines, then combine them together, much like we did small scenes from Harmony. Make sure the one you want to export is the current active sequence. And then File, Export, Media. And then it's going to pull up a window very similar to what we have seen, say, in some of our other programs. Key thing we're looking for is our format. We're going to choose H.264. And then under the preset, you are going to scroll down and you are going to choose either the YouTube or Vimeo 1080p Full HD setting for your project. You are going to pay attention to where it's saving it and what it's called. So I'm going to save it inside my project folder here. So I will save it there. Make sure, so H.264, YouTube 1080 Full HD. I've verified the name and where it's saving. That is critical, otherwise you'll do this and you'll be like, where is it? I don't know. Make sure it says 1920 by 1080, which is our standard HD setting. And once we've done that, we don't really need to mess with any of the other settings. There are some more advanced things you can do to export out at higher quality, especially if we are producing something that is more of an intermediate project or we need to have an even higher quality option. So you can see we have a lot of different formats to work with here beyond the H.264. ProRes is everybody's favorite when they're trying to produce the absolute most pristine quality, but we do have options as we work through here, so we can start to play around with some of our bit rates and other things like that so that we can create a higher quality project. If you leave the settings as is, just choose H.264 YouTube, call it done, you're going to be in good shape. Do always make a check to make sure that it is exporting out at the frames per second, the size you want, audio is being included with it, so you know that everything is good to go. And then after that, click Export. And this is where, depending on the length of your project, you may need to go grab yourself a cup of coffee, a snack, an adult beverage, or whatever else is going to work for you. And now that that project has been saved, I can go and find it, and animation compilation, here it is. And I can see I have my text, the text will fade out.
Why would a slug
My
and a goat-headed man
next
be
scene comes
talking
in.
the first place? That makes no sense.
With the fork.
I hate you.
Likewise.
You're a Twinkie.
Yeah, I heard that one. What else is new?
So
You mind?
it seems
How
that
come you didn't come out the other
it's
night?
coming
What now?
out.
What are you
Getting
talking
decent
about?
playback
Don't play dumb.
out of
you know.
this. So the playback seems to be solid. I'm not getting a lot of artifacts and then visuals as my clips are coming together. We can see the child is.
It seems
looking
that
around.
all that ever happens to me is people grab my face and pull it left, pull it right, pull it up, pull
So
it
when you're
down.
working in Premiere,
Frankly,
if you keep your
I'm
wits about
tired
you
of it.
and do what you've done in previous programs, so you've learned or used After Effects, you've used Adobe Audition, you've worked in Photoshop, you're used to some
The war
of
is
the
a total
Adobe
disaster.
workflow,
It's a
and
catastrophe,
you're able
nothing
to
less.
work on these things to produce your end finished result. That will give you all of the content that you need. Start on black, end on black, throw in titles, credits, and we're solid.